Not so fast, Cobra Commander. Whatever you're planning, it ends today.
You're too late, G.I. Joe! For once Dr. Mindbender's portal device reaches its full power, I will be taking Cobra to a whole new world to conquer. And by the time I return to Earth with a planet-sized army, the whole universe will know the name of Cobra!
Then that means there's still time to stop you. Yo, Joe!
Cobra!
G.I. Joe will return after these messages.
Man, talk about bad timing on this release.
Yo, Joe!
Originally released in 1964 came G.I. Joe, the foot-tall action figure with the kung fu grip. As well as acting as the base hardware for shows like Robot Chicken, G.I. Joe is more widely known for its reboot in the early 1980s, which came with a big media push. But these days it's known more for this.
Who wants a body massage? Low. Mr. Body Massage Machine. Gone. Body massage.
G.I. Joe can probably be best referred to as a relic, a very jingoistic show where the good old US of A creates a special international task force known as G.I. Joe, led by a man codenamed Duke, to fight against the wacky, world-dominating plans of the Cobra organization, led by Cobra Commander, usually by shooting a whole lot of guns. I call it a relic because G.I. Joe, of all of the big names in boys action shows of the 1980s, is the series that has struggled the most to evolve in a world that has changed its stance on depictions in the military. A gaggle of American Army boys starting fights around the world with impunity has pretty much lost its luster in a post-Iraq War America, especially after the direct call-out dealt to it by Team America World Police. Aside from a single mediocre movie released in 2021, G.I. Joe hasn't gotten any serious release for almost 15 years outside of comic books. Their last attempt at a TV show, G.I. Joe Renegades from 2010, makes probably the best attempt at evolution, with a story where Cobra has infiltrated the American military-industrial complex, with G.I. Joe resisting them as sort of outlaws like the A-Team. In case you can't tell, even as an American, I was never a fan of G.I. Joe. It's one of the reasons I am so astonished that when I mentioned the G.I. Joe release in my video on the subject and Renegade said, hey, we'll send you something, I was expecting them to send, the starter set like they did previously. Instead, they sent me everything. Twice. Literally the painted and unpainted editions of all of the products. This was something I mentioned in my last video but didn't really dig into detail, in that nearly all of HEROSCAPE's releases have a painted and non-painted version, with the painted version usually costing about $20 more. And these painted versions have been surprisingly popular. One of the reasons I was sent the unpainted version of the starter set is because the painted version was actually sold out. This is because the original version of HEROSCAPE was also painted. It's not great painting, mind you, often just a quick wash with literal stickers for terrain, as was the style at the time, and not to mention this was a toy for children. It means that people who enjoy painting or want to play the game at a lower price have the option to buy the unpainted minis, while those willing to pay the extra $20 can get the fully painted experience right out of the box. Opt-in premium pricing. Though I will concede that in this specific area, Renegade has the unique advantage of being backed by Hasbro, so sourcing the manufacturing was not an issue for them the way it might be for another game. It solves one problem by creating another, since you now have two different products to deal with. Not sure how many other games can have the luxury of going half painted, half blank. So, the G.I. Joe 2-player starter set is $20 more than the Battle for the Wellspring set, but it does at least have 2 more characters and these large impressive walls. Not to mention, the characters in this box are, like, the main characters, featuring lead characters like Duke and Cobra Commander, their second-in-commands, the pair of rival ninjas, and either the brains or the brawn. It's a real all-star smash-up, and one could argue the best foot forward that they could offer, akin to putting Optimus Prime and Megatron in a starter set rather than selling them at a premium. G.I. Joe gets 390 points of figures while Cobra gets 380 for them to be fairly evenly matched. Otherwise, the contents are roughly the same as the Battle for the Wellspring box, though they did have the decency to include enough dice this time. I also like how the action markers are different colors from normal if you wanted to mix it up a little. To my understanding, these blue ones are supposed to invoke the old Marvel HEROSCAPE line. Yeah, G.I. Joe is not the first crossover they've done with it. I think it's also why the G.I. Joe terrain is unpainted. It's the same as the Marvel stuff. I am also intensely amused that this specific scenario setup is clearly meant to be a diorama, and, well, ask and ye shall receive. Also for sale is an expansion set that fills out the cast on both sides by adding 2 new units for each army, 1 solo hero and 1 pair of heroes, 190 points for Cobra and 150 for G.I. Joe. Each faction also has an army box that contains with a small squad of soldiers and a flying vehicle, containing 120 points for G.I. Joe and 105 points for Cobra, for a grand total of 660 points for G.I. Joe and 675 for Cobra, though right now the Cobra gets a bonus Serpentor figure which adds another 130 points to give them over 800. And in case you were wondering, Serpentor, along with all of the other free with purchase figures who are later put on sale for 20 bucks each, only come pre-painted. That's why they're $20. But where's the cool figure for the G.I. Joe side? Where's Sergeant Slaughter? Could they not get the rights to him? A note, the organized play points limit is 500, which actually gives a small advantage to Cobra as they hit 485 points by just adding their army box. 495 if you swap in Serpentor, while G.I. Joe is 510 with their army box, and so either needs to drop the chopper or swap in something from the Strike Forces box to get an even 500, at which point so can Cobra. A smidge of an oversight there. Yeah, a grand total of 4 items, just 1 each, gets you the whole line of G.I. Joe, which can make a pair of faction-centric 500-point armies with wiggle room on both sides. It's not exactly cheap at $215 for the unpainted version, but at least you can do it piecemeal. That said though, there's not a lot of space for them to do battle, is there? Which begs the question, is HEROSCAPE G.I. Joe cross-compatible with the rest of HEROSCAPE?
Now, back to G.I. Joe.
The portal is open! You've run out of time, G.I. Joes! Farewell, Duke, and hello to the new era of Cobra!
Not if I can help it. Yeah! Where is this place?
It worked! It worked! Soon the rest of my Cobra forces will join me, and together we will conquer the earth!
So, a portal to a new world has opened. Then I, the mighty Torkul Na, shall conquer this new world as well. Rise, my Marrow warriors, and prepare to take over.
You'll have to get through me first.
Ah, help me, Duke! Save me and I'll do anything you ask!
You'll surrender and give up your evil ways?
I'll do almost anything you ask.
The Earth finds itself confronting a deadly new enemy. Will Duke be able to survive? Find out on the next episode of G.I. Joe! Yes, actually, completely 100% compatible, and it's not unprecedented. HEROSCAPE may look like a fantasy series from afar, but it has always involved sci-fi elements, aliens, and yes, army soldiers. Sergeant Drake Alexander is sort of the game's first mascot after he got isekai'd to Valhalla after jumping on a grenade to save his men. Honestly, G.I. Joe getting isekai'd might be one of the best ideas it's had in years. And each army actually has a bit of a different way of engaging with the outside factions. The G.I. Joe characters, for example, also work with other soldier characters, like the aforementioned Sergeant Alexander, while the ninja characters can work with, well, ninjas. Cobra is more insular, however, but the twins do have an ability that lets you slap the Cobra logo on any hero character to give them the benefits of the faction bonus. And while we're here, I realize I never got the chance to explain how squads work. Squads are units made up of multiple models, like in many war games. They all take their turn together and each gets to move and perform an action. The downside is that each model has 1, maybe 2 health only, and so the squad gets weaker as it takes damage, unlike hero characters. Attacks from squad members resolve individually, and so squads can fight one or several units and hit them multiple times, with the caveat being that their target brings in their full pool of defense dice every time they are attacked. This can work well against hero units with low defense dice pools to overwhelm them with attacks, but not so much against heroes with a lot of defense dice. The other advantage is, since attacks target individual models, units with big single attacks can take out one model at a time, so squads can also be better at absorbing damage from heroes unless they possess some sort of anti-infantry skill like Roadblock gets. So if you remember from the starter set how the Squid Kids had a trick where they could let another character take a turn when their turn comes up, it turns out that this turn fixing mechanic is surprisingly common across HEROSCAPE, such as these little dog things that let my leader characters take additional turns and even heal themselves. The Cobra Troopers, Duke, Baroness, Serpentor, and both flying machines all get turn-fixing mechanics as their special ability. It's a feature unique to HEROSCAPE with how its action economy works, where you commit your actions beforehand and where every army worth its salt packs at least one turn-fixer. And I can understand why this action system might be daunting for people getting into it. It's certainly one of the reasons that the point limit is so low, but the fact that they so readily give you ways to manipulate that system gives the game a surprising amount of depth. But simply combining these two sets together isn't the only way players can expand their battleground. In addition to the G.I. Joe pile, I was also sent a wound token set, a paint set, and a box of terrain. The paint box is a pretty standard setup for something like this, and you see similar sets for Warhammer and the like. In this case, it's a set of 10 paints and a model to test them with, complete with the character card for use in play. Unlike the ones you get from WizKids, we get 10 full-sized bottles of paint with a strong white, a black, yellow, green, brown, a flesh tone, and a warm wash, along with some metallics and what I assume is the color meant to paint the base rim. I do wish it came with some sort of red though. And I can paint, I guess. Truth be told, I've never used Army Painter. I tend to use a combination of Citadel and Reaper paints. I'll give this a try and see how it goes. As for the terrain sets, well, this set, the Caverns of Valhalla set, contains about as much terrain as the starter box, while sporting a price tag of $60. That's a little much in my opinion, and while I do appreciate that it comes with a new terrain type to interact with, shadow terrain that does not interfere with movement and offers a defense bonus to anybody inside of it, but for this price, more than the 2-player starter for the 2-player starter's worth of terrain it contains, I do wish it came with a little more to it. Maybe a card to clarify the terrain type akin to the zipline card in G.I. Joe, or even a scenario book. Now, the website does occasionally offer new scenarios to play based on the new sets, like in this case a scenario that makes use of the core set and this new box, but I kinda feel like there should be a little book that gives us small encounters inside the set itself, akin to the ones found in the Wellspring starter. Other games have experimented with including a little scenario guide with their larger terrain sets, such as the Dystopian Wars Cyclone of Shadows book, and for this price, especially on recycled molds, I think we deserve that here as well, even if it's just 4 pages long. And finally, we have the premium wound markers, and I don't know about these, Chief. The ones included in the box may be small, but they're also handy and stackable. It feels a little bit like an attempt to follow up on the Glyph pack, which actually is worth it. These, on the other hand, are basically poker chips. Honestly, I think people would get more use out of an essentials kit that includes everything a player needs to get started, maybe with some unique colors on the dice and damage counters. Or, here's a crazy idea, a box that specifically stores the cards inside of it, because these cards are kind of a funny shape and they're a real pain to store. If we could get a solution for that, that would be great. And so, that's HEROSCAPE's take on G.I. Joe. It's not the cheapest game of toy soldiers on the market, but a lot of the stuff sold used is still pretty cheap on the secondary market if you get it from the old starter sets. Most of my Mero army was pretty cheap like this, along with one lucky break in the form of Subak Na here. But again, all of the old stuff is still legal for play, so if you do have that old stuff, you're allowed to pull it out and use it, And this current iteration of HEROSCAPE is doing its best to keep it kid-friendly like in the old days. It's a fun game for all ages, and you're welcome to try it out. Great game to share with the kids, 4 stars, check it out. Until next time, this is Kohdok signing off.
Freedom against Cobra, a ruthless terrorist organization determined to rule the world.
He never gives up, he'll stay till the fight's won. G.I. Joe will dare. G.I. Joe!